For the past couple of months, I've been getting a lot of questions about one specific camera that I've been using. Today, we're going to be talking about the Insta360 One X2. Roll the intro. Hey, what's up? It's Nicholas, also known as Sentient Poison, also known as Mr. Edgelord. Let's review the Insta360 One X2. And I think the best place to start is reasons why I got it. From there, I'll tell you reasons why it may interest you, my overall review, and some unique pros and cons that it has. I basically have about 6 specific personal reasons as to why I got this for myself on my birthday last year. The first would be documenting my life. I have a bad habit of filling my phone's storage, so it saves storage on my phone and keeps my phone from having a meltdown. For 2, it shoots 360, so I don't have to worry about where I need to point my camera, because I might be having a fun moment with my friends, but I want to capture the way that I banter, but I also want to capture the way that they banter and that they react. So it's kind of a struggle, which way do I want to point my camera? And then the third reason is because I don't have a waterproof setup. I have had a lot of times when I went swimming with friends that I was worried I would drop my camera in the water, so I decided not to film any of it. So for documenting my life, I thought that this would be the next step forward from my phone and my already existing camera gear. Reason number 2 is behind the scenes. This is fairly straightforward. I wanted to make reels and TikToks and be able to have footage of me shooting that I can use for YouTube tutorials to have that POV kind of effect. Now reasons 3 to 5 kind of feed into each other. And those reasons are easy filming, stabilization, and cool new perspectives. So for one, my hands are shaky as hell. My hands are basically as shaky as Doctor Strange's. If you look closely enough, it will begin to bother you too. So having that stabilization allows me to film easily and not have to worry about anything at all, because it might not make a big difference for most people, but it certainly does for me. And then lastly, probably the most specific reason to me, filming myself. When I need to talk about my life and the things that I'm doing and the things that I think of, I want to be able to bring up B-roll of that. And I want to also just be able to look at footage of myself at a certain moment in time, because I'm never gonna be there again. I'm never gonna be that person again. And I think that it matters a lot to be able to capture stuff like that. And rather than having a drone that keeps making whizzing noises and annoying everybody else around me, I'd rather just have a selfie stick and have it film me. It grants me a whole new kind of angle, literally, and perspective that I have never been able to have before with my more conventional cameras and lenses. So now, reasons it may interest you. Like I said, cool perspectives. 2, it's a gimmicky camera, and I mean that in the best way possible. There's a lot of ease of use, because really what you're doing is you're extending a selfie stick. But to shoot, all you're doing is pressing this button in the middle. By the way, I'm just gonna cut in here and say if you're enjoying anything from this video so far, leave a like and subscribe. I upload videos weekly about camera stuff and just about what I think about life. If you like my voice and the aesthetic of these videos, then go ahead and subscribe. All my links are down in the description below. Anyway, back to the video. So right, with all the reasons that I bought it and all the reasons that you might be interested in listening to more of this review, let's get down to my actual review of the specifications. Number 1, image quality. The camera allows you to shoot 3K, 4K, and 5.7K. At 5.7K, it's really good. At 4K and 3K, definitely not nearly as good. If you lower it down to 3K or 4K, it allows you to shoot 100 FPS or 60 FPS respectively. At 5.7K though, it only allows you a max of 30 frames per second and also offers you the option to shoot at 24 frames. Overall, the quality is pretty good, especially at the center of the image. Now, the farther away you move out though, the more things begin to fall apart. So if you look at the edges of the images that you're capturing, generally speaking, those are the things that are farther away from the camera, but it's stretching it back towards you. You can definitely see the pixels and the quality falling apart there. So if you're shooting wide angle, it is pretty damn good, especially in daylight and in good lighting situations. But the more you zoom in and the more you look at the edges, the more you notice flaws in the image quality. Now, the dynamic range. Dynamic range is a bit of a mixed bag. It exposes you pretty well in daylight, but also, if you look at the sky, it tends to blow it out. In darker situations or in shadowed areas, it definitely crushes the blacks. And then it tries to raise or try to find a middle ground with the midtones, because the midtones is usually where where our faces are, so that's what it's trying to expose, at least if you put it in auto exposure. You have an option to shoot in HDR, you also have an option to do manual settings. Now, stabilization, super solid. I don't even worry about it. As long as you're aware of the stitching and you're not like spinning the camera around like this, your footage for the most part is gonna look pretty damn stable. You barely even notice the pixels shifting when it's stabilizing digitally, but then in darker spots or at night, that's when you'll notice the pixels shifting, especially again at the edges. And for the Sony shooters, this is probably the most important criteria. Low light. You know what I'm gonna say? Not great. It's the best, obviously, at 5.7K, but obviously it's still there and it's still not great. And like I said, stabilization becomes super obvious, so does the stitching of the two lenses. Footage isn't very flexible because, again, it crushes the black, so when you try to raise it, a lot of noise comes up and a lot of color noise also comes up, and the dynamic range shows where it's lacking. Audio though, I was very surprised and delighted at the fact that when I first watched a couple of my first shots, the audio came out pretty damn clean. I mean, I don't know what else to say. I'm not really much of an audiophile, but it works out great for me. I'm perfectly happy with it. Now, this is something that usually you wouldn't put in a review, but it's pretty integrated. So, the app. Gimmicky, but frustratingly useful. It's pretty annoying how much I actually like the app. You have control over your keyframing, you have control over your animations, you have control over adding different filters that actually look pretty good. You're able to do a basic color correction just from your phone. So again, gimmicky, but frustratingly useful. I hate to say it, but it's worth a download. Now lastly, the user experience. Mostly positive, but takes some getting used to. A lot of the functionality of this camera relies on you having to use their touchscreen, but for me, in my experience, the touchscreen isn't the most responsive. In that sense, it makes me wish that there were more buttons, but I get it. They needed to seal this camera as tightly as possible to make it waterproof. So in that sense, the app helps. It lets you operate the camera fully from your phone, but there's also lag in that connection. Now, there is a lot of simplicity in this thing. The simplicity definitely helps. That said, the simplicity can be handy, but it takes getting used to. You can definitely use this without having to get used to it on your first day of buying it, but to its fullest potential, takes some getting used to. Now for some unique pros and cons. Starting off with the pros, this camera is so tiny you can take it anywhere, including places where you may or may not have been told to not bring a camera and that you shouldn't be doing any photography or videography in. Hypothetically, if I was thinking of doing it, hypothetically, I would bet that I would succeed. Moving on, like I mentioned, you turn it on and let it rip. You don't have to think about much at all. The only thing you gotta make sure of is that it's recording and you can just let it rip. And that gets really handy if you're doing this for easy filmmaking, for being able to film yourself, for being able to document your life, or being able to make good but really easy to make content. Now, for the cons. It gets hot. Like, really hot. And that's because of the battery, which is the second con. The battery life can be a bit spotty. So using this both in Texas and Chicago, two very different weather conditions. In Chicago, I didn't notice it heat up as much, so I also noticed how long the battery life would last in comparison to shooting in Texas, where it does get hotter and the battery life starts getting eaten up a little bit faster. And the last con is not really a con, but kind of a con if you're conscious about this. Be ready for it to eat up memory, especially if you're shooting in 5.7K. Obviously that's going to eat up a lot of memory real quick, and I think that also contributes to it heating up and eating a lot of battery life. But yeah, that's not really a con in the sense of it's shooting 5.7K. It's eating up as much memory and as much battery life as it does because it's shooting in the highest quality that it can. A quality that's higher than even other cameras or your phone. So you gotta weigh where your pros and cons really lie. Now, based on everything that I've said, this camera is definitely not for everyone. But if you like what I said, something clicked, or you resonated or related to something that I said, then maybe it's for you. It's definitely something where if you know what you're doing, it will work for you. If you know how to make it work for you, it will work for you. The more that you know how to shoot and edit, the more you'll be able to get the most out of it. I know that I can make it all look cinematic, but I'm not at all betting on everybody being able to do that. It has a lot of unique uses and features and functions that I didn't even get to mention here. The ones that I didn't mention didn't really suit me. But the things I said about this that I like, I really like. There's nothing quite like this, especially in the price range that it is, that meets my needs so specifically, so well. maybe it'll do that for you too. So if this at all sounds like you, if this sounds interesting to you, and the price point is not that much of a hard pill to swallow, or you're willing to save up for it, I say go for it. I hope you enjoyed this video. Leave a like, subscribe, and if you want to follow me on Instagram, I am at @sentientpoison and at Lolin. You'll be able to see some stuff that I make with the Insta360 over there and over here on the channel. That's it for me for now, and I'll see you next week. Cheers. Alright, we're good. Seriously, this thing is great. If you have the money, go ahead and buy it.